Good afternoon to you, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for the 23rd of October, 2015. Let's talk about intense, historic Hurricane Patricia, the very latest information from the National Hurricane Center indicating that the winds are still near 200 miles per hour and the minimum central pressure down to 879 millibars. That is a very low air pressure on this planet in a tropical cyclone or any storm for that matter, and as such the winds around a very small area, and that's the good news about this, it's a very small ring around that eye where the winds are 200 miles per hour with much higher gusts. And notice right here, this paragraph, hurricane force winds extend outward up to 35 miles from the center. Tropical storm force winds outward up to 175 miles. Now, looking at the latest satellite image of Patricia, that's the eye clearly, and this is the central dense overcast, or what we call the CDO, the round convective ball that is driving the engine of this powerful hurricane. And the 200 mile per hour winds are not through this entire area, thank goodness. If so, then this area would be uninhabitable for probably the next 25 years. It would be absolutely horrific. It's going to be bad enough as it is, but we have to make sure we understand the context here, that the very strong winds are located only right in here, and probably really just the width of the pixels that I'm drawing on the satellite picture. And as this moves in towards Manzanillo Bay, or maybe just east or west of there, again, it's only a small area that will be impacted. And I emphasize this because luckily for these people, this is the way it is. And this is a good thing considering what we're looking at. Believe me. So this is the very small area of intense winds, and that is headed towards the general vicinity of Manzanillo and that bay that's up there. I mean, my goodness, the storm surge, even though it's going to be a small geographic region, is going to be enormous in that one area. But we're not talking about a 90-mile wide hurricane force wind radius. What we call the radius of maximum winds is confined to this tiny little area here, and that is indeed good news. And I want to emphasize that because it's not like this entire area, including Puerto Vallarta up here. This area in Puerto Vallarta probably hardly going to notice anything. A few rain showers and some gusty winds, and if you're 50 miles away from the eye, you wouldn't even know that it went by if you were sleeping. Maybe some tropical storm force winds here and there, some torrential rains, that's about it. But you would not know, if this was not in the news and we didn't have this technology, that a 200 mile per hour historic hurricane passed you by if you're over here somewhere, just a few dozen miles away from the center. And looking at this Google map, the center of the hurricane out here still, and the scale, this is only about 10 miles. And so Manzanillo Bay, roughly 10 miles across, hurricane force winds extend out another 10 miles either side of that. So this is the extent of 74 to 200 mile per hour wind in this fairly small stretch. And the storm surge in that bay, yes, that could be catastrophic, absolutely. But we're not talking about, again, this entire area being laid to waste. And that's important. Even folks over here in either it's Colima or Calima, sorry if I said it wrong, probably not going to have to endure the nightmare that could take place in Manzanillo and points west from there along Highway 200 here, I do believe that says. So it is bad, don't get me wrong, but to put it in proper perspective, luckily for these people, it's a small area of unbelievable intense winds. It's all headed for this region. Yes, it's going to be a big problem, but again, luckily it's not a giant, wide hurricane like Katrina was. It's hard to do on this planet to get giant hurricanes with 200 mile per hour winds extending out 100 miles from the center. That's the good side of this. The bad side, it's a historic hurricane, and we certainly hope for the best for folks in Mexico. Once it makes landfall, another story starts to really unfold as Texas here, especially the coastal waters, and then areas just inland, become inundated with very heavy rainfall. A strong southeasterly wind already in place just increases as the leftovers of Patricia come into the scene here. This is valid tomorrow morning on the GFS. This is 36 hours out into time on Saturday night. We see low pressure beginning to develop again from some of the remnant energy of Patricia along the Texas coastline. Heavy rain in and around the I-59, it's not an interstate, but Highway 59 corridor, and between Houston and Victoria down towards Corpus Christi, and getting close to the Rio Grande Valley. San Antonio could be in for some very heavy rain. Very difficult to pinpoint where that may happen. These big blobs of extremely heavy rainfall training over the same area hours at a time, dumping 3, 5, 6 inches of rain. It's impossible to know where that's going to set up, just like snowfall. They say, hey, a big area could receive a lot of snow, but they can't tell you that certain neighborhoods are going to get specific amounts of snow. You just have to wait for the event to happen. But we see the low intensifying a little bit, kind of a hybrid type system, more of a frontal shape to it. It has some of the energy from Patricia, but not purely tropical in nature. We'll see what the Hurricane Center says about it, if anything. Certainly the National Weather Service on top of it, weather.gov, for information on that. And then finally, as we get into Sunday night into Monday morning, early morning, there's that comma shape to the system right there, telling me that it is more non-tropical in nature. It's not round and symmetrical like that. And these, this is not a front. These are feeder bands here. And you notice that in the GFS picture, we don't really have that. This is just more of a comma shape, like you see these mid-latitude storms that come down and sweep out to sea from time to time. This will more resemble that, with a complex mixture of the leftovers of Patricia and mid-latitude energy combined with Gulf moisture. So the effects, though, similar to a tropical storm: coastal flooding for the usual areas along the Louisiana and Texas coasts, and then very heavy rainfall for the interior regions. So you got to pay attention. Use common sense. This is what the radar looks like now for the Texas area. Not much happening yet. The moisture will come in to the south here as Patricia makes landfall later today off the map. Unfortunately, there are no active radars that I could find anywhere near where Patricia is going to make landfall. That's too bad, because it would really be fascinating to watch this come in. Luckily, this radar shot made by the folks at NOAA and the P3 that went through there recently, the P3 Orion Hurricane Hunter, provided this radar image. So a lot going on. Unfortunately, it's an intense hurricane hitting land. It's a sight to behold over the ocean, but when they interact with land, that's obviously when things are not so pleasant anymore, and the science takes a back seat to safety and the concern of the people that are on the ground there that are going to be impacted. All right? Well, I'm going to be headed to Texas myself tomorrow, Saturday morning, to study the effects of this unique coastal storm, some flooding, coastal issues. We have cameras that we're still testing for when we get a big, powerful hurricane in the United States again. It's just a matter of time. We've been very fortunate to have a lull of almost 10 years now to the day that the last significant strong hurricane hit the United States on the Saffir-Simpson scale, that is. We've had certainly intense hurricanes since that time, Wilma in 2005. But I'm going to be headed to Texas to document what's going on. I'll be streaming live on our Ustream channel and on our HurricaneTrack.com site and social media, Twitter, Facebook. I'll plug in the links to those streams throughout the weekend. All right? Well, that's it from me for today and for the weekend. I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com and, of course, for Hurricane Pro and HD. Stay safe if you're down in the Mexico area dealing with this hurricane. We'll be hoping for the best, and I'll be back with you next week with a look of what the rest of October and the first part of November may bring. Hopefully it'll be quiet. Have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you next week.